she's a mountain, then you're in a...
Hi everybody, this is Lori, and I am the host of Inclusivi-TEA Sustainability. And what you are watching now is part 2 in a 3-part series during which we talk to Rita Davern, Ramona Kitto Stately, and Melody Gilbert about making the documentary Stories I Didn't Know, which explores Rita's experience learning about her family's role in taking land from Indigenous people. Joining us on this podcast is co-host Shannon Crossbear. This is an interesting and beautiful story, and a story about friendship and taking responsibility and restitution, and I think you're going to really enjoy it. So please join us now, and then come and listen to part 3. Thank you.
Because, I keep reverting back to K-12 education because that's where we learn everything, but we don't help people understand, all right, diverse perspectives, right? It's such an important thing, and it's such a healthy way to live. And I think this film exhibits all of those ways of exercising your own personal strength and courage.
What a beautiful moment for that right now, too. Because I feel that we as a country are on a pivotal moment of, we either do something about this and we start celebrating each other and learning about each other and respecting each other, or we're in dire trouble. And so I think that the film definitely speaks about that willingness to learn and learn about someone else, and frankly about what do we do about it. Once you know something, once we look at slavery, once we look at what's happened to Native Americans, once we look at the damage that we as white people have done, I think that the only question left for us is, okay, what do we do about this? And what do we do about this that's big and meaningful? And so I think that this movie helps us talk about that conversation. And I'm pleased that a lot of organizations, I think not enough, but I think there are definitely organizations right now that are doing things like putting into their conversation, acknowledging the land that their building is built on has been stolen. And I think the question is, so what do you then do about that? And I think, Rita, when you talk about kind of authentically figuring out what can I actually do about this that I'm actually going to do, I like that kind of authentic question is, all right, now we acknowledge this, now what's next? Because acknowledging it is certainly not enough. So I just applaud this and the conversation around this. I'm just going to welcome Melody. Thank you for being here. This is the writer and co-director. Is that accurate?
Co-producer.
Co-producer of the film. Okay. So in a minute, we'll be talking to you more. I still want to ask a few more questions of Rita because we haven't really asked you any other personal questions. We've been so focused on the film. So I would love it if you would just talk with us a little bit about sort of your history growing up that led you to even have these questions. If you can, give us just a little bit.
Let's see. I grew up in a really, in some ways, really beneficial environment. It was small, homogeneous, Catholic neighborhood, parish. That was the center of my life. And it was good in that it was safe and it was connected and it was tied to a heritage, There were many good things about that, a lot of social justice focus and a lot of basic ethics modeled and taught. And I got a very free-range childhood. So I was one of 5, and I got to explore the city on my own from a very young age. And I was fishing in the Mississippi River and on foot for miles and miles. I knew this city like nobody's business, and we knew where the hobos hung out before I-94 was built, and we just had many adventures. Mm-hmm. So that was the good part. The hard part is, that it was very insular, and it didn't have a lot of pictures of people challenging irrationalities in society. I didn't have female leaders around me other than the nuns, and I did more and more as I grew older find some, but I was missing some pieces. And then there was trauma in my family, and it was handed down, and I can tie it right back to the, history in Ireland that generations later. So I witnessed that and I experienced that harshness and alcohol and all kinds of stuff that I, really damaged me. And I wanted out, and I thought I thought the answer was to get out. And so in my teens, I said goodbye to all of that and went off and refused to go to Catholic college after 12 years of Catholic education and went to the University of Minnesota. That was my big rebelling. And so I started getting, access to the rest of the world. And that was good. And I never stopped that. I still, that's still a big priority of mine is let's see what's next for me to learn about the world and the people in it.
So Rita, if you were going to, in a couple sentences, tell us your philosophy, sort of the things that run you, the things that move you forward, what would you say it is?
It's about connection. It's about connection, and there's another part to it. I want to say play. That I'm a parent educator and I work with child-centered play. That's what I do. And so I know the power of connecting to people through play rather than through conversation. Mm-hmm. And you learn so much about each other. What's that saying about you learn everything you need to know about somebody on the playground in kindergarten? So that's what I do, and I love it, and it keeps my spirit vibrant, and it also is a revolutionary way to change things, is to give attention to young people and to give attention to parents so they can listen to their young people. So
very nice. And then sort of my last question before we bring in Melody more and talk more about the film from the two of your perspectives as well. What advice would you give to young people coming up? And whether it's to filmmakers who are coming up and have a story they want to tell, or just to people in general, or to creatives, what advice would you give?
I feel like creatives are still teaching me. I don't feel like I have anything to say to them. I'm new at this, but I could say something to my white middle class cohorts in St. Paul, Minnesota and beyond, who grow up starved for a picture of the world and relationships with people who are different than they are. And so I would say anything you can do to reach out from there, just go take a Somali cooking class, go to the bowling alley and see who hangs out at the bowling alley, whatever it is in your neighborhood, in your life that you can do to expand your horizons so you get smarter about the world. It's really a good thing.
That is wonderful advice. That's terrific. So then you told us a little bit, Rita, about how you got Melody, that you'd taken classes. We've
been talking about you, Melody.
Yeah, they were all good things. And by the way, just for anybody who's listening, Melody is pretty impressive. She has a host of documentaries that you both directed your own and written your own, and then you've also directed other people's. Is that accurate? Produced other people's. So she's a big deal. So we're really, really excited to have you here, Melody. So you asked her to participate in Melody. Why did you say yes? What was it about this story that you liked?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, and hi, everybody. To answer your question, Rita initially approached me about helping her to make a film about her grandmother.
Mhm.
And I found her grandmother to be very interesting. She had, kind of a traditional immigrant story that many of us have, that could relate to. And, I started out doing that. That's basically what happened. I thought that would be an interesting challenge, a historical film about her grandma. But the more I got into it, the harder it was to make, to be honest. What was much more interesting to me was Rita's story. Her grandma, she always would like talk in the third. It was always like about my grandma this, my grandma this. But every time we would talk, Rita would get emotional, which is hard to imagine right now because, of her kind of, what's the word, Rita? Your upbringing. Put your audio in.
Reserved.
Yes, reserved. Her reserved nature. I didn't want to say the wrong thing. Where it was not going to be about her. It was never going to be about her. It was just about her grandma and her journey and all the other people who were affected by it. But I just noticed there was something going on with Rita beyond all of this. And every time we would talk, we'd have these coffee meetings or we'd get together. And the more I was working on this, the more I realized I had to tell Rita's story. But the problem was I had to convince her that was the story that needed to be told, because she doesn't want attention on herself. She certainly didn't want a film where she was going to be the center of the film and she was telling the story and all of this. But I think over time, after, I don't know, we keep going back and forth about this, somewhere between 3 months and 6 months, where we could see that I think Rita finally came to the point that her story would resonate with everybody as long as she allowed us to go on the journey with her. So all the footage, like from Ireland and all the stuff, the historical footage, all these things that I had been initially playing with, we basically started over. And that's the film that you're seeing in Stories I Didn't Know. And there's a little bit of the stuff in Ireland in there, but basically I just went with Rita on her journey as much as she would let me, which wasn't always. But, like there's some examples in the film where, she was struggling with her brother and her relationship with her brother. And I would say, oh my gosh, that's great for the movie. I'm sorry that you're struggling with your brother, but can we come along? Can I hear a phone call? Can I see you talking to him? No, I have to deal with this myself. So it was those kind of struggles I kept having, but we pushed through it. And eventually, and also meeting Ramona was, such a joy and a thrill, and all these wonderful things kept happening. And then it became Rita's story is everyone's story, right? If you really think about it, everyone, if they looked into their family history, would find some things that they're not pleased about or that they're uncomfortable with or that they don't really want to share, and maybe even embarrassed about. And I think that's the most human thing of all. And that's what really drew me to working with her. And plus her openness to originally reaching out to me to help. But then when we did finally get to that point, we became partners in this and became co-directors and co-producers. And, we just kind of pushed forward and decided to make that film. So it seems to have resonated with you guys, and that makes me really happy. And that was the point. I know Rita has a whole other film about her grandma that she wanted to make and has since made. Mm-hmm. And she did finish that. I don't know if you've talked about that at all. But I didn't make that film. She made that film.
So, Rita, how was it working with Melody?
Oh, we're very different. We approach things differently. And so I had to, as you said, I had to open up.
Yeah.
That's what I had to do. And that's not easy. But you also have so much heart that, and you're such a great listener that we would get together and I would just like start talking about things I never talked about before, because you're a really good listener. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think sometimes Rita probably felt that I was pushing, and
No.
for me it was like normal to have these kind of conversations, but they weren't easy for her. And the good thing is that because I do my own filming, probably I don't know if we figured out percentage wise, but maybe more than half or 75% of the film is stuff that I filmed myself. And they were just moments when I was with Rita and I just pulled out my little camera and started filming. And, that was very helpful. I think if we had tried to do it with a crew, like the guy with the big camera and the big microphone, the boom mic and all that, she never would have really gotten to the point that we got to. And so I think that was probably also an advantage that, worked to create the mood and the conversations that we needed to have in the film. But I did feel bad sometimes. Like I know I said, well, you tell the story about the family reunion. I was like, oh, you're having a family reunion? Are you kidding? We have to film that. And she's like, what? Why? Well, let's see. Things like that. So I don't know if you want to share that story, but that was kind of funny.
Yeah, well, we argued because I finally agreed that she could come as long as all she did was take pictures and film people, but don't ask them to say anything because they've already told me they don't want anything to do with this film. They don't want to be interviewed and they don't want to say anything. So I tricked them. We had a party coming up and I didn't tell them until 2 days before that Melody and Miles were coming. And so they were very unhappy with me, but they came anyway because this was a birthday party. And so they came reluctantly. And I said that morning, we're not talking about the family history. I'm not rocking the boat at this birthday party. And then just as people started walking in, I changed my mind. And I thought if ever there was an opportunity, this is it. So I said, Melody, we're going for it. And we did.
And how did you do that? Because that's when you said people are reluctant, people don't want to admit. I think a common response is, but I didn't do that. It's like, yeah, but your past did, your family did, and all of that is rooted in us, our traumas as well as the decisions our families made. So how did you broach that?
It's all there. It's all there in the film. I just said, here's what I know. Here's what I know about our family, and here's the history as far as I know it. And this happened, and it bothers me. I just said it bothers me, and here's why. And so I said a little bit, and then that was enough to trigger their reactions.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll just add one little thing in there that I have made quite a few films, and pretty much what I predicted would happen happened. I mean, you can kind of tell, especially with Rita's family, the kind of family she has, and that they don't talk and they are reserved, if that's the right word, that it will happen. She's going to say something. She's on this mission to share what she's learned, and she can't hold back anymore. So where else are you going to get that other than that environment? So it was very intuitive on our part, and Miles and I were positioned. It was one of the few shoots that there were two cameras. The other shoot that had two cameras was when we were on the overlook with Ramona. And I think, Miles and I both talked about where our positions should be, that we how we would film it. One of us would be on a wide shot and the other one would be on a tight shot. So we weren't both, up close and giving people room and space to not feel that we were in their face, even though we were. But then you forget about it after that moment happens. And then I think that's what happened with Ramona as well. Maybe you want to talk about that, Ramona, how that made you feel when we were there.
Much as I really did try to just ignore that. And stay in my own, space. So I appreciated not having it all there. And I remember, wasn't that first day, I can't remember. It seemed like it was hot.
It was raining. It had just finished raining.
But, I also know that you're the expert in your area. So, you know what you're doing. And that was really obvious, in all the different ways that film came out and moves people. So I just trusted that. I love Miles. He,
Oh yeah.
He came in the house too. It didn't disrupt much, and
That's
so
why he's a special guy like that to work with. It's always good to find partners that you work with really well. And I know he filmed the segment with Ruben, which was, also lovely. And anyway, the point is that we, I think, figured out ways to pull things out of Rita that she didn't want to share, and then we needed to get the family involved because it's not just about Rita. Of course, it's about Rita and her relationship with her family, and we all have those kind of things with our family. Even if we think they're perfect relationships, there's always something or someone somewhere, and it showed itself, right? It reveals itself. And then her relationship with Ramona, we did talk about filming more with Ramona, and that came up a couple of times toward the end. But then, once you start putting the film together and you realize that you have these stages and you have the things to come back to help move the film along and make it that almost anybody could watch this movie and not feel left out. Like, to me, it's not a film about Minnesota only. It's not a film about, St. Paul, Irish Catholic families or Native American families in Minnesota. The whole point of this film is that it can work the feelings and the emotions and the acknowledgments that happen are for everyone in the US. And that was really important to me. So when we started talking about should we film more, and we were in our sort of last part of the editing, I think we decided not to, and that was also an argument that we got in. I don't like to call them arguments, but discussion about the ending, even how we wanted to end it, and what was the appropriate ending. Did Rita need to do something? Did she actually need to accomplish a thing? And we went back and forth. Should she go here? Should she do this? Should she go to the Capitol? Should her and Ramona go together somewhere? And it just, after a while, you realize that that's not the point. The point is to start the conversation, not to make the happy ending, we did this thing. And what she did is human, which is you think about something, you start something, and maybe it goes somewhere, maybe it doesn't, but you started. And that's the point, isn't it? That we're all starting. 10 years ago, no one was doing land acknowledgements at events, and now everyone's doing them. You start somewhere, right? So, I think that's the point of the film was that. And when we would go through these phases of showing each other, clips and going back and forth and, picking over some words here and there. They're all important and meaningful. So I'm glad we got through that process. And in the end, Rita, you're okay with me. She still likes me, I think.
Are you kidding?
So I want to ask one more question, and then Shannon, I would love if you have any questions you want to ask about the film to any of our wonderful panel of experts, and then after that you can ask ask Melody some more questions more about her story specifically. But before I turn it over to you, I just wanted to ask, how long did the editing process take? Because I know that can be exhausting, and you have so many hours of film that you have to cut down into this really lovely, much more compact storyline. So how long did that take?
I think we finished the filming, was it in February?
Well, I think, the thing about the editing process is that it's not something you wait to finish the filming and then you edit. You're editing all along. The technique for the editing that I always, and I'm a professor, I teach at a university down here, and I've taught for many years on and off. And I always try to explain to people that it's too big to say take the whole film and try to make a film out of it, right? So if you take thematically, like say with the Overlook, with Ramona as a scene, think of it like a play. It's a scene, right? We went there and we filmed this scene, this thing that happened. And maybe the first edit of that was 10 minutes and maybe the last edit of that was 5. I don't know. I don't remember. But, my theory is to edit by scenes, and then you figure out what order those scenes go in. So you don't wait until you're done. And so it's really too hard to say how long it took, but I know one thing. We edited this movie probably faster than most films get edited, because for a variety of reasons. I mean, including the deadline for the film festival and things like that. But I think, I knew at some point that I was leaving and I was going to Louisiana, and I wanted to at least try to get this to a point that we were close, and because I would be a little more distracted when I got down here. And so I would say maybe a year and a half total from when we started Rita together. Yeah. When did we start the original film about your grandma? When was that? That was already.
It was January of the year before. So
okay, so so probably between a year and a half from actual beginning to end. But I think it was a pretty solid year of editing. So, and the filming was also a solid year, but we were doing both at the same time.
Right. That is a pretty fast film, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I've never done anything that fast, but part of it is that I had, Miles as a partner who was also, he and I had already worked together on, was it one or two more films? I can't remember now, but so we knew each other really well. So it was easy to kind of get some initial things together because we have very similar brains. And then we would show those things to Rita, and then Rita would give us her feedback on that. And then we'd go back and re-edit based on her feedback. And then we'd eventually, all three of us would come together on something we agreed on.
All right, Shannon, do you have any additional questions, particularly about the movie? Now, I have to admit that Shannon jumped in to do this interview without having seen the movie because I had someone else lined up to co-host with me who fell through yesterday.
Oh.
So I actually called Shannon and just said, you didn't hear this beginning, Melody, but I really am trying to honor the cultural history of the people I'm interviewing by having someone else on the panel who's at least closer in cultural background than I am, if we have a definite difference. And so I called Shannon this morning, or texted her this morning and said, hey, are you free at 4?
That's great.
And here are some questions I want you to ask. So Shannon has been just a trooper, and frankly, so exciting that you and Rita know each other. I'm so glad.
Oh, that's great.
We've known each other for 20 years, yeah.
I'm so glad.
That must have been a surprise to have her pop in.
So glad.
And I'm happy to send you a link if you want to see the film, Shannon.
I think you do.
Great.
Oh, I think your audio, Shannon, your audio.
Okay, let's see. Is it better now?
Yeah.
Oh, no. I would love to do that, Rita. I would love to see it. And Melody and Ramona. And so this is the first time Ramona and I have actually met, unless we saw each other at a powwow and just didn't know it, right? Which is, it can happen. And I just have to say, Lori, you were saying about, wanting to do a cultural match. And I'm like, oh, you got it both, because I'm Ojibwe and Irish.
I know.
Wow, that's some great connection.
And Ramona is Dakota and Irish, right? So you're like, oh wow, you got it going on. So yeah, and just I'm fascinated. I'm drawn in. I did get to read just kind of a synopsis of the film, and I was drawn in immediately. And let me tell you, I was drawn in by both things, and I think that that's what's fascinating to me, is that I was drawn in, of course, by the journey itself, but this idea of the journey and the intersect with what you learned about your family and the Dakota lands was really because I am so grounded in a sense of place. So that sense of place, and not that there was a singular place, but Rita, as you talked about, the sense of place prior to being here on this continent, right? And your people being here, and then the intersect and a sense of place here, right? And how important and that is, so Lori was saying, I think that value, especially right now, because we don't know where we're going, but before we know where we're going, we have to know where we come from.
Yep.
And so having, and the disconnect, especially for those that came to this country under other circumstances, that got that disconnect, and then to kind of, I guess, heal that. And, you know, and it doesn't matter, you know, we all have skeletons in the closet, right? Yep. My Irish mother whispered to me at 80 years old a story about my grandfather, my great grandfather. And there was no one in the room, and she's whispering me to this story, and was so shamed to that and so afraid that someone would find out, and at which I kind of was like, I think it's okay, Mom. You know. But,
oh my God! Stop right there! Stop right there! I want to make a documentary about this. Don't tell the story. This sounds really good. I love secrets.
So in this, I guess the question that I have is, you know, just there's the other dynamic that I see in this conversation is the relationship that the three of you developed in the process for an additional part of the story, right? So, yeah.
I would like to jump in with one thing you said, beside the fact that I want to make a documentary about your grandma now. For me, this film was always about two women who had a shared history on or near or close to this one piece of land. It just took a while for that to develop, because following Rita on her journey meant that I had to, you know, find those steps along the way. And after the meeting on the Overlook with Ramona, I mean, that was 100% for me. This movie was about two women. It wasn't really Rita's journey. But it also became like, what do we really want to accomplish with this film, which is, what conversations do we want to start? And so it wasn't useful to put in, I think, as much history and all of the historical things that we had talked about originally. But what I love is when Ramona did the tour, because that wasn't like a traditional historical documentary moment. That was her just taking us on her personal journey and sharing that story with other people. Oh, here's Ruben. Yeah. And so that was beautiful. And then now you have him. So this it keeps going, right? Like all these layers to the film just keep showing up. And so Ruben was something that really touches a lot of people in the film. And maybe you guys can talk more about that.
Hi, Ruben.
Hi.
Ruben pops in every now and then to say hi to Rita.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the connection and that piece of the story.
Ruben, you better talk.
Yeah, it's your turn. You're here.
Well, I feel like in Dakota tradition, we get names. We get named. We actually have like a really cool like star knowledge like thing I can share with you. It's like when you come from the stars, there's this woman in the stars who brings your spirit. She actually lives in the what's it called? The
Big Dipper.
Yeah, okay. I could remember it in Dakota, but not Big Dipper. She lives there, and those three stars, we have a name for them, and it translates to like the stretchers, like they're. And she walks out from that big, the Dipper part. And she walks out on those three stars, and she sends your spirit to Earth. Mm. And it's the creator, or it's your ancestors. It's like certain. There's these. I've never really been told what to understand, but as you come to Earth as a shooting star, someone picks your name. They say who they saw you as when they saw you come to Earth, And so this is how people get their names. But there's many different ways you get a name as well. People might have a dream, and your relative will tell you this is what your name is because I had a dream about it. Or but I've heard people tell stories about that like your name was chosen for you before those people had dreams and things like that. But I was born in 1999 and whatever. But my great 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 grandpa, who is one of these people that we talk about in the story, his name is Maza Adidi. I have his name tattooed on my arm. He was there and he fought in the war in the 1860s, and he now his name was Maza Adidi, and 4 generations later you can have a name default to you because that was your ancestor's name. And so that's what happened to me, is that this name was it's like how do you say it? It's now my name. Mm-hmm. I don't know. There's like a word I'm trying to say, but basically the name has become mine now. And I like carry it forward, and then in 4 generations there could be another. And so it's kind of a cool thing because I feel like language, and I talk about it a little bit. I don't know. I think language is so cool because it's not just the words you say; it's like what you mean with what you say. It's different. And Maza Adidi, when I tell people my name, even people who are very good Dakota speakers, the name is kind of interesting because we don't name people like that anymore. In the 1860s, when everyone spoke fluent and was free, they didn't. This name was I don't know if it was common or not, but these Maza names, a name with Maza in it, we would just basically it's kind of translated to walks on iron. That's what people translated it as. But to walk is Mani, not Adidi. And Maza is colloquially translated to iron. But for thousands of years before we ever had metal, Maza meant something strong and almost indestructible.
Mm.
If we had this concept of Maza, something strong, for thousands of years, it means much more than just metal or something like that. So, and then Adidi isn't like walking, it's like climbing. It could mean climbing, and it could also mean like treacherously stepping. Like it's hard. It's not fun. It's not a walk through the park. So it's just interesting that when I told someone this name, they were like really excited about it because they were saying like, wow, that's a cool name, because they were saying that the way they interpreted it, they were saying like that, yeah, that's like you're climbing and it's really tough, but like you're my mom always said like that it's like having that strong will to be on your path, you know. It's like that person is strong, that person, and things like that. So I've always had that name to like live up to, and it's awesome, and it's a great connection that I carry with me, like everywhere I go. I don't get a chance to tell people or anything, but when I do, I'm really honored to like share and say that that's my connection to this history and my ancestors. You know, this is my bloodline, and this is what I'm carrying. This is what I'm carrying forward. You know.
Thank you.
Beautiful. That comes out in his music too. That's in the movie. Yeah. And to me, that's one of the things that touches people so much. What you just shared comes out in your music.
If she's a mountain